And we're live. This is very excited to have Anne on today. Anne, thank you for being here. I'm going to give kind of a little bio here first, and then I'm going to toss it over to you here. So bear with me. Today, I'm joined by Anne Janzer, who's an award-winning author and nonfiction writing coach, author of several books. The latest, actually, I think you just released this, is Get the Word Out. You also wrote a book that I read that I didn't realize I read. Well, I didn't realize you wrote it until I read your older book. Is called Subscription Marketing, which is really something where audit is a subscription-based business, but managed service providers are a subscription-based business as well. A lot of folks are. So that was a great book. And then one from 2018, which is what really prompted me to talk to you today, is this book, which is right by my side. Hopefully everybody can see this. Writing to be Understood. And as I said in the description of this episode, there's really nothing more important to selling IT services than to transform that kind of technical talk, the geek speak, into easy to understand language. And Anne is an expert at helping people explain complex concepts in the simplest way possible. So in addition to publishing these books, Anne actually has a deep understanding of the technical field, having been a technical writer for a software company, I believe. You were also in corporate marketing, social media, and then you shifted into writing and into coaching others on writing as well. And did I miss anything?
No, that's a good sum up. Right.
Awesome. And I'm going to put your website up here now so that folks have it. I'll put it back at the end, but this is where we want to direct you to go when you're interested to learn more about Anne. So Anne, thank you for coming. And I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't finish reading your book yet. I usually don't do that, but I was really so excited about having your message, and I had to buy the book right away. I found you from doing my never-ending research on explaining complex technical info simply because that's what Audit does, our company. And there's something you talk about in this book, and I heard it on the video that made me go get this book that I saw of you that ended up making me run and get your book.
Really? And then let me know what that is.
And I immediately booked you as a guest on my show before I even got the book. So it was this one thing that you taught in here and that you talked about that was like a major aha moment for me. And I think it's going to be profound for our audience to hear about as well. It's about a study that you reference, and we're going to get to that. I'm going to tease it up front, but I wanted to make sure people stay on because we're going to talk about it at the end. And that's probably going to be one of the bigger takeaways I think people are going to get. So we're going to end with that. But to kick things off, Anne, I know you have the brand new book called Get the Word Out, Write a Book That Makes a Difference. And that came out, I believe, middle of November.
Yes.
Of course, obviously, what compelled me to get to book you is the book Writing to be Understood. Specifically, what I'm interested in is the research behind your book a bit, because you really dive into the why and how of effective communication. So I'm super interested to explore this with you, especially from a sales perspective. And you have a ton of experience with this, not just through writing, but you also we're in the technology. So I think you have such a really great vantage point here. Let's start with why do you think this is even important?
Well, so to dial back my background, as I spent a lot of time as a freelance marketing consultant, and I worked with over 100 different technology companies in the course of that freelance career. And my job was usually to come in and take the geeky technology, and I would actually be the marketer running into the really geeky ones when everyone else was running out going, I enjoyed that. I just love that, figuring out the puzzle. But then to try to distill what the business decision maker needed to know about that, right? There's this huge chasm sometimes. And it feels like, there's a whole language that's used in the whiteboard, when someone's whiteboarding something for you, there's that whole language. And then you have to go back and get the language of your reader and speak in that language and what are their concerns and try to make that connection. So this is, if you're in a tech services business, if you're in the software business, anything, you need to know how to do this. The word jargon has a bad rap, has a negative connotations. Really, it's, industry terminology and abstractions. And, there are certain businesses that you're in that you can't even describe the business without using jargon. We're a cloud services provider, right? I mean, we have to have these words. So I'm not dissing the words. It's understanding when and how you need to use the words and the unintended consequences that can happen when you stop paying attention to the language that you're using and who you're using it with. That's what really interests me, is that what's going on in the listener's mind, in the reader's mind, how do things land? That's a really, really fascinating topic. And that's what I was trying to get at with the book, Writing to be Understood. It's like, it's not about me, the writer, it's about my reader. What's happening there? Really interesting stuff.
And that's that really segues into the question I was about to ask, which is getting in the reader's head, right? It's definitely true in sales. You have to understand what problems your customer has. And in some ways, it's easier to do that with a customer than a reader because you can talk to the customer. Obviously, you're doing our users, MSPs, are doing a technical assessment. So they're actually interviewing the author. How do you recommend in the book and just in general to uncover those things that are going on in people's heads? And as a kind of part two to this, a lot of times, sometimes they don't tell you the truth.
Yeah. So let's dig into both those things. One is, how do you uncover, the real truth of it is it's really hard to get out of our own heads, right? There's something called the curse of knowledge, which is that once you've learned something, it's really hard to remember what it was like to not know that thing. So if you're working in the tech industry, if you're working, deep in the IT infrastructure, you have invested a lot of time and a lot of effort into learning all those abstractions, all this terminology, the layers on layers on layers of detail. And they become a second nature to you. So it's easy to forget how other people feel about them. So really, the best thing is obviously to get in front of someone who is your ideal reader or your ideal listener and talk to them and ask them to be open. But again, for various reasons, people don't want to say, so what do you mean by DNS? I mean, they may or may not, or even this cloud thing, what, right? I mean, it would be, they might feel embarrassed at this point to say, I don't really know. And there's another point too, is that maybe you're using the terminology that is people have encountered before and they can come up with it, right? It's like DNS. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Do you see what happened there? I had to stop and process, right? If you're using something that I know, but it's not super familiar to me, I'm going to have to go rummage around, say, yeah, I remember what that is. Or right, I'm spending some cognitive energy on that. I'm spending some of my prefrontal cortex work decoding what it is you're telling to me. Now, if you are a salesperson, you want people spending all of that work coding the content, the key thing you're trying to tell them. You don't want them wasting it on, what was that word he just said? I think I know what that is. Every time you're sending them off to do that, you're taking their attention away from the thing you want to be putting it on, right? So there's this sense of it's called a cognitive burden, I think is one thing, is this extra baggage you're giving people by not being really clear in the words that you're using, not using unfamiliar terms. Now, again, sometimes you have to, if you're talking about something that's a very specific, we need to talk about your firewall, that you got to talk about the firewall. So there's an art to using the term, but also providing a really friendly synonym along with it, or using it in such a context that it's really clear what it is you mean. And I think that is something to work on as a speaker and as a writer, certainly as well, to work on how do I make sure that anything that's unfamiliar but necessary, I need to use it. How do I tee it up so that the listener feels, of course, smart? Oh, yeah, I know what that is. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you mentioned the curse of knowledge, and I saw that in the book as well. I think page 39. I'm going to say
Oof,
because I
he
was
knows
just
the page
reading it, I
number.
was just looking at it. It's something we talk about a lot. We've been talking about this since we released Audit a couple of years ago, 4 years ago now. It really defines, and I've heard other experts who talk about the topic of simplifying and why it's important to create presentations and write in a way that people can understand because of, and they always bring the curse of knowledge comes into this. And we talk, if you're at that high end of the knowledge scale and your presentee is at the low end, you better not talk to them like they're on the high end. So people listening now probably have heard me and my partner Frank DiBenedetto, the founder of Audit, talk about it. But that's mom and dad talking about it, right? Like we're scolding them. So I'd love you to kind of talk, a little more about what the curse of knowledge is and how it works, and how do you force yourself not to do that? Not even, I think people know sometimes they know they know why they shouldn't talk that way. They're trying not to, but even how do we even unpack, like, how do we tell if we are when we're trying not to? Because
Right.
sometimes
And
people are trying and they still do it.
let's just say we all do it, right? It's a rare individual who doesn't. So I try to build in processes to protect me from it, right? This is how we do it. We do it with process. So if you're writing, you're lucky because you have a chance to revise, right? So my theory about writing is write in any way that's going to get the content out there and then use revision to fix it. So don't get caught up as you're trying to write your first draft of something. Don't get too hung up on it. I mean, think about what your reader needs and where they're coming from. Of course, you're going to write better, but write what you need to write and then go, pick a highlighter. It's like, okay, I'm going to take yellow and everything that looks like an industry term of art or abstraction or an acronym, any of those, I'm just going to highlight them and without judgment, just highlight them. And then I'm going to look and say, is it necessary to use this? And if it is it, do I think it's going to be familiar or unfamiliar to someone, right? And use that as a guide to say, okay, well, maybe this one is not necessary. I can use a different word. This one is absolutely necessary. So I'm going to make sure to define that acronym the first time. The second time I'm going to use it, but make sure it's in a context or with a little sidebar so it's super clear what it is. And then by the third time, I'm going to think maybe the reader's comfortable with it, right? I'm just going to, you can do this in a way and it doesn't seem like dumbing down. So process. So that's my writing process. In terms of speaking, I have to rely on other people too to tell me, what terms am I using? As a speaker, you can prepare. If you're giving a presentation, of course, you get the chance to prepare, which is nice. So you can run it by someone and say, I want you to raise your hand every time I use a word that makes you think twice. And you're offering value to me by doing that. So not that you don't know, but that you just have to stop and think twice about. That's what I want to know. So, the thing to know is that here's the problem. When you're preparing that presentation, you might be sitting in, well, okay, right now we're all sitting by ourselves, but when you're in an office, you're surrounded by your colleagues, right? And so this is the language you all use. This is your in-group language, is this terminology. This is how you communicate. It's efficient, it's effective. So what happens often is we write things that we think our colleagues are going to like, as opposed to the things that we think the readers, we inadvertently write for the people who are around us or the people maybe who are even going to approve the thing that we're writing. We inadvertently do that instead of thinking about the customer. So it's really important to have a clear thought, a clear image of your reader, your customer, your person sitting in the presentation with you, and present to them and not your colleagues, not your boss, not all those people, because you're going to need to use different language.
And you've said it's not about the words. Let's talk about that a little bit. In the book, you said a piece of writing succeeds or fails not on the page, but in the reader's head.
Yeah.
So to increase the impact of writing, focus beyond the words on the topic, on the minds of the readers.
Right. I mean, I think we get caught up in our words is like, oh, I'm going to, whoop, look, I'm going to throw out all this stuff I know. I'm going to do that. But it's like, I want to write something that, writers do this. Like, I want to write something that's really beautiful that people are going to look and say, wow, what a wonderful writer she is. That's the wrong objective. That's not what I want people to do. I want people to do and say, wow, that writing has an impact. That idea really resonates with me. Then they'll come around to what a wonderful writer she is. She had this idea that resonated, right? But not by just because the way I've packaged it, the way I've put it up in words. That's not our goal. That's not our goal. So it's hard because in the tech industry, you put a lot of time and effort into learning all these terms. So we're all heavily invested in them. They are almost part of our identity when we're in tech, as talking the talk, right? So it's hard. It takes confidence to put it aside and to put the needs of someone else ahead of you as you present and as you talk and as you write. And so again, everything depends on the audience. But if you want to be effective, that's what you need to think about.
Interesting. You talk about the problem of technology experts describing the next big problem coming without sensing discomfort or confusion in their readers or listeners. What is that? What did you mean by that?
Well, we get very caught up in what we're sharing and what we're talking about. And it could be a tech person. It could be anybody who's caught up and excited about it. And we have to, let's see, I don't know if I'm talking about the misinformation or actually discomfort. Maybe discomfort comes in like the artificial intelligence. Let's say I'm going to go on and talk to you about this incredible use of AI within whatever. And I'm not sensing that there's some pushback in the audience about, I do not want the bots listening in on my, whatever it may be. We also have to pay attention to if people are just inherently uncomfortable with something that we're saying or talking about, and bring that to the fore as well. Often we're just so busy chasing down that exciting thing, that shiny topic we want to talk about. We're not paying attention to how things are landing with people.
Right. Interesting. And you talk about in the book using too much fear or not too much fear. Like, one of the things we want to do in a sales presentation is talk about the pain a little bit, right? And using too much data and fear can hurt us, I've heard you say as well. Like, so you can do that too much. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there's two things I want to get at. One is data and one is fear, which are sometimes the data is used to institute fear. But let's talk for a moment. First of all, data is obviously essential. But when we lead with data, and especially if we're trying to change someone's mind, especially if someone's like, my IT infrastructure is okay, I don't need to worry about it, and you start barraging me with data about breaches and things, right? That there's some possibility that's just going to make me shut down and dig in, right? It's a lot of cognitive overload, a lot of burden, and it institutes fear, right? And so the thing about persuading people to do something is you have to understand that fundamentally fear it's a powerful persuasion technique when you want people to do nothing. If you want them to not change something, lead with fear. It's like, don't upgrade that computer because the new OS is unstable. Okay, fear is a really great reason because we tend to freeze when we're fearful, right? Mm-hmm. If you want people to take action, fear makes them tighten up. So you're kind of working against it. So if you want people to take action, you want to actually lead with something more positive. It's like, here's a scenario where you're comfortable. Here's a scenario where you've gotten outside of these risks. We can get you to this scenario where you don't have to worry about these things. You want to lead with a positive vision because that's what's going to motivate us to move forward. And in that capacity, telling a story is often much more powerful than dumping a bunch of data on people, because we remember stories and we don't remember numbers and statistics generally.
So how do you recommend people weave stories in if they're not used to it? I've had this question, and some people are just not good at that. And I've had that question before where people go, well, how do I tell a story? I've got only an hour to present this. How do I tell a story about every little thing that they don't understand? And do they have to
Right.
do this long thing? And what?
Yeah. Storytelling, can be super intimidating. And, I don't think of myself inherently as a storyteller, but I'm trying to kind of work on that skill. But I would say to that person, don't forget the story, the hero's journey and all that. Just put it aside, spin out just a scenario, a moment in time that you've seen or that this person might experience. I was working with this dentist office. They came in one morning and there was an email saying that none of their patients' records would be released until they paid a ransom. So there's a ransom. You've just defined ransomware, but you've done it from the perspective of the story. Their waiting room's filling up. They have no idea what to do. You give them, you just paint a scenario. A scenario is like a little micro story. And I imagine that everyone should be comfortable being able to do something like that. Just take that, work on that little tiny scenarios that let the reader, the listener, reader, whatever they are, just for a moment, see what it's like to be in someone's shoes in this situation. Now you can then back up stories with statistics. You can say, that scenario has happened to X number of businesses this year. You could data is great for reinforcing stories, but storytelling doesn't have to be complicated. It's making a human connection that's not just about abstractions and numbers, but about feelings and experiences.
Like putting it into context, right? Like giving them some meaning behind what this thing means. Here's what happened when somebody else had the same result.
Yeah, but it also brings like a little emotional context. It actually brings, if you tell that scenario right, I might have visualized something. It might bring visual context. So it is engaging actually more areas of my brain as I listen to you than just listening to a bunch of data, right? If I can put myself in this situation, I've just visualized the dentist. I visualize what their workstation looks like when it says this. I can think of the emotion. My brain is firing up all over the places. I'm a much more engaged person with your presentation now when I have that. So isn't that what you want? Isn't that what you want, to make a stronger connection with someone?
Right. So I want to talk now at this point about my kind of aha moment, the big thing that I wanted to keep till I want to use as a bribe to keep people paying attention and keep people on the call here. But this was kind of my aha moment. I kind of knew this concept, but never had it explained this way. And I love it when like something I study like this a lot comes up with something new. There's a cognitive psychology reason why sounding too smart can actually hurt you from a sales perspective. And one big reason we will get pushback from some of our users, audit users, is they want to put more detail in audit than we have the ability to put in. And we keep audit very simple for a reason. The focus is on the business on the other end of that presentation who is non-technical. The focus is on making them understand what the MSP is saying at all times. So some MSPs out there will think, well, how am I supposed to show my expertise with such a simplistic report? If I don't add all this stuff in here, how am I going to look smart? How are they going to think I'm an expert if I'm just, and with sales, when you're going out, they always say, I think the percentage is you should talk 80% or 70% of the time and listen 80 to 70% of the time and talk only 30% of the time. And then on that side, they're thinking, well, I should be I should be talking. I should be telling them all about this technology. So wanted to kind of talk about that study a bit.
Yes. So this is one of my very favorite research studies ever. And I'm going to read you the name of it because I have to write it down because I don't remember it otherwise. It's called Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilized Irrespective of Necessity, or Problems with Using Long Words Needlessly, by Daniel Oppenheimer, who was at Princeton University at the time. And what he did, and it's not specific to tech, but it so applies. It so applies. They did a bunch of different experiments to make things more complicated or less complicated. They took applications to grad school, right? And for some of the applications, they swapped out some of the words and put in, $10 words, right? Fancier words that you might think that, grad schools be like, ooh, this person's really smart. Look at the vocab they're using, right? And then they had the people who, read and assess those applications and applicants look at them. And the applicants who had the more complicated, fancified applications were not regarded as highly as those who wrote simpler applications. And this is for an English literature grad program, right? So the recipients actually thought they were not quite as bright, like they're trying a little too hard. They did a bunch of other things. One of the things they did is a couple different translations of Rene Descartes' Meditations. And one of the translations is more complicated. And again, the people who were asked to say, oh, how bright do you think this philosopher is and how smart? The more complicated translation, they did not think that the author was smarter. They thought, not as smart. And that was true even when they were told that it was a translation of Rene Descartes, one of his most famous works, Meditations.
Amazing.
They still I don't think Descartes was that hot stuff. If they couldn't understand it, they don't feel stupid. They think you're not so smart, which is this wonderful twist. I don't know if you've heard the acronym Keep It Simple, Stupid, right?
Yeah.
KISS, right? Here's the twist on this. It's keep it simple or they're going to think you're stupid. Which is
and that was such a new way to look at it. It blew me away when I saw it. I was like, because I know, my background, I first started down this line and you kind of look back I look back at my career and I go, where did I start? Why did I have an interest in this? Because I was drawn to audit as a company. I was friends with the founder of it. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's amazing. I wish I had this for my industry. I got it. And I started to put the pieces together where I first got interested in this. I taught martial arts for when I was in college. I started teaching martial arts to kids, 6 years old, because nobody wants to teach the young kids because it's the hardest to teach the young kids. If I would go, hey, everybody raise your left hand up, and I would put my left hand up, and they would put their right hand up because they're mirroring me. Like I had to learn. So through trying to figure out and that's why I don't have any hairs teaching kids martial arts. So I started teaching myself how to explain things simply and how to explain things so kids understood it. And I got really good at it. And that has been with me for a long, long time. But I never heard it put this way. Like I really never heard it put this way. I used to, I know why when somebody is explaining something to me and it's confusing, I tune them out. Right. And I usually, and you said this before, I won't stop and ask them a question if I think that I should have known or if I feel like I think I should have known the answer. Right. And I know that for MSPs, your prospect is sitting over on the other side of the table thinking the same thing, because I am the non-technical guy hearing you explain this. And I'm processing in my head, am I stupid or is he stupid? Am I stupid? Maybe I'm stupid. And if I think that, I'm not going to ask him the question. But on the other side of it, if I think he's stupid, I'm going to also tune him out because now I'm not going to hire him. So.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Again, it comes back to that cognitive burden for one thing. It's how much work do you want to do trying to figure out what this guy is saying. And then there was another study, which someone just sent me today, and I'm just going to share with you just the highlight of it. This is from the Columbia Business School, which said that people who are of a lower status, this is the takeaway from the study, lower status people use more jargon, right? So they call it compensatory conspicuous communications. Right? So there's this thing, if you're just popping out all the jargon right, left, and center, it might be because you're feeling less secure about it and you want to beef up your your cred, your street cred, your tech
Right.
cred by using the language, which is, again, this is because language is sort of a way that we signal in-group membership, right? I know the words, I can hang out with these tech people because I can talk like them.
Drop in the words. I once did that, by the way, and it got me it did not get me the job.
I don't know how that happened. So if you're finding that you struggle with this, here's another way to frame this. If you're thinking about it, if you're thinking, well, the people in my presentation, they should know or something. Think about it like this. Let's say you're giving a presentation. Yeah, you're giving it to a client's tech team, and you don't want to insult them, but just assume that one person on that team, it's their second month on the job, and you want to be like a mentor to them. So they're going to come out of this meeting feeling more confident and smarter, right? So if you try to think about it that way, how would I explain this to someone who, of course, should know, but I'm just going to make sure that they cue it up so they feel really smart and confident and comfortable? Well, if you make all of your prospects feel smart, comfortable, and confident, I think you're going to probably have a pretty good sales record, right? I mean, I think that would be a good just approach to use, right? So something to think about if that helps.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So, what I'm hearing is that I've always known, we read about this, and this is probably something that people have heard, that the more you listen, the smarter people think you are, right? This is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's something like most people who've sold anything read at least once. And it is really true. I've tested it in years, and as soon as I learned it, I started using it, and man, it works like crazy. People, if you just listen to them and you don't talk, they think you're smarter. And the reason is because people want to be heard, and they feel loved, and they feel respected by you. So they're going to assign intelligence to you based on the fact that you've listened to them. And the same effect, I think it sounds like the same cognitive or psychological effect is happening on people when they understand what you've taught them. Like when you're going through either a sales presentation, or they follow you, they respect you more, they like you more, they transfer that onto you.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. If you can help somebody feel and really be a little bit smarter, more confident, comfortable, they're going to feel better about themselves, and they will certainly feel better about you. And when you're just dumping them with technology terms, it's kind of like slamming the door in them, or giving them a little, hands off. And that's, you don't want to be hands off to your prospects, right? That's not going to be the basis of a good long-term customer relationship. You want to be connected.
Right. Okay. So for audit users listening to this, I'm pointing right at Anne, and I'm going to put up her website again. Hang on a second. AnneJanzer.com. So Anne told you guys, you have to be simple with what you have to be worry about being understood. And it's scientifically proven that you have to do that. Now, I'm going to kind of ask you a question. This one's one of the things, this is for me, right? This question's for me. Okay. But I think this is going to help our users as well. We just threw a little data at our audience, right? My audience, right? We gave them a study and the results to demonstrate that their belief that they need to present a lot more of their own technical info in order to sell them as an expert is not going to have the result that they want, right? But you say in the book, they could be now kind of sitting there across from us, arms crossed, dug in, not buying it. Why is that? And how do I better get this point across to MSPs? Because I think it's really one of the most important things, that they need to remove that geek speak. I know it's like getting kids to eat broccoli, right? I know it's good for you. I know you hate it. How do I get them to have the same aha moment that I just had without getting them to kind of dig their heels in and talk about the phenomenon of digging in? Okay.
Well, let me just ask first. Okay. So pick a topic that you're interested in, but it's outside of your domain, science or something, right? Or something in science. So I read a lot of cognitive science. And so go grab a cognitive science textbook, and then grab a book by, say, Dan Ariely, right? Who writes about decisions. But he writes in such an engaging storytelling way. Read them both and tell me which one you feel smarter at the end of reading. Of course, which one do you want to engage with? Which one do you, just flip it around from yourself in another perspective where you're maybe not as familiar with the domain, and think about what it is you want from a speaker or a reader. I mean, there's a reason why TED Talks are so popular, right? They don't get up there and give a lecture that, they make everything approachable. So the best way to look at it is just to put yourself in that position, but choose some other industry that you're not an expert in. Would you rather go to a doctor who sits down to give you a serious diagnosis and speaks entirely in Latin terms, or one who tells you, look, here's what this is going to mean for you. Here's some other resources. I'll answer all your questions. I'll give you all the Latin terms if you want them, but here's what we're at. This is what we all crave in our own lives. And so you have to believe that is true of the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah. And I think it all goes back to what you talked about in the beginning is empathy, right? Like that. And I've heard you, I don't know if you said it here now in the book, I'm losing track, but cognitive empathy, I think, or,
right.
Really understanding that, because I think that's a problem, right? We think the other person on the other side of the table, sometimes when we're talking, we think of them as ourselves. Like, what would I want to hear? And it's I think it's easier for me as a non-technical person sometimes to preach this, because I know that that's what I want to hear if I'm on the other side of the table with a technical person. I want to hear it simple, straightforward, just get to the point. But a technical person kind of likes talking about this. So how do we force them to get in the other person's head?
Yeah, force them. We're not going to force anyone to do anything.
Yeah, I guess we can. Yeah. I was hoping you would give me the secret to forcing them.
Secret.
I know it's good for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think for that person who's really feeling pushback at it, I think I would just try to say, look at the person across the table from you, someone who's in your field, but you're going to have to mentor, that you're mentoring, and you want them to succeed. That's one way to get around that idea that, I have to live in the technology. Yeah, you do, but everybody starts somewhere, right? Everyone starts somewhere, and if you can try to be approachable like that, if you. I'm not asking you to give up your terminology. You're going to be very comfortable with it. You can answer follow-up questions, but you just need to meet it out when and where people need it, right? That's the key. And that, my friend, is the mark of a true expert. Someone who can go back and forth between the domains, who can look at it from a different person's angle. Here's what they know. Here's what they need to know. That is real expertise. And when you demonstrate that, people are going to think, dang, they're good. Dang, they're good. They know what they're talking about.
Awesome. Okay. Last question, or second to last question, maybe last question. I'm really enjoying this conversation with you. This is, I study this stuff so much, and I'm always looking for content on this, and that's how I found you. So you reference a bunch of books in the bibliography. I was looking through them. That was the first place I flipped to. I love seeing what you're reading. A lot of them look like I need to read them, but
sorry about that.
Well, what would you say? So what would you say are the top three that recommendations on this kind of topic that we should go get? And especially since there may be new ones that you've read recently, since this book was published a couple of years ago now, based on knowing that we're looking to get MSPs to speak in language their clients understand, what would you suggest we all read now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm reading so much all the time that I'm not going to look and see what it is I recommended, because
I'll tell you. Well, I'll you wrote this book a few years ago, but I just read it today. Yeah. So I know it's easier for me to, I love the first one was a book by Alda. If I understand you, would I have this look on my face?
Yeah, I know. I love that. It's about science communication, but it's hilarious and brilliant. And, because again, he's someone who wanted to talk to scientists and then communicate it to the real world. And he has this whole research institute on how to do that more effectively now through Stony Brook University. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's a fun book about science and medicine, and communication in there. I think, there's so many books about communication, cognitive science stuff. I just love, all of the irrationality of our brains and how we work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to sit and think for a moment about books. So
Yeah,
just,
that's okay. I'm putting you on the spot with it because I know that I've got the answers in front of me. I guess really the answer is I'll tell people is they should just go get this book.
Well, there you go.
And then they should go to the bibliography and get a bunch of the other books. So
Yeah.
definitely let's start with that. I'm going to let you off the hook with that.
Okay.
Go get that. So here's the one question I told you this is my last question is do you have, I love to get other guests on that are like folks that I'm having on. So who would you recommend that we have on the show to talk about stuff like this?
Oh, so here's one person that might be wonderful is Purnima Vijayashankar, who together with my friend Karen Catlin wrote the book Present, a public speaking guide for techies. And I mangled the subtitle, but that's the gist of it. If you're a techie and you want to do public speaking, this is your guide. And so I think that's a beautiful fit for your audience.
And she's she's the person who I found you through.
Yes.
So I found you by watching a interview that she did with you. It was like a 25-minute video. And I was like, and you mentioned that study. I was like, I ran to get the book and I ran to have you on the show.
Yep. So she would be wonderful. She's all about stepping up and speaking, but speaking effectively to others. There's just so many good writing books. That's the thing that it was kind of drawing a blank. It's like, I can't even begin to tell you. Everybody Writes by Anne Lee is a wonderful writing book from more of a marketing perspective, but, definitely worth visiting as well. But yeah, no, I think that Present, that book I found very useful myself in presentation, public speaking.
Awesome. So I'm going to remind people that they're listening to the Elevating IT podcast, and you can get to all the episodes at auditforit.com/elevatingit or find us on iTunes. And make sure I'm going to put Anne's info up here again. And Anne, this has been fantastic. I popped up your website again, but I want to thank you and give you the last word to tell our audience anything that you would like about what you're doing and what you got coming up.
Well, what I've been focused on lately is just my latest book, Get the Word Out, Write a Book That Makes a Difference. So if you're interested in writing a book, that's a good one to check out. Other than that, just if you want to send me a question about anything we talked about, my email is just anne@annejanzer.com there. And I would be delighted to answer any questions or talk with you about how to fit this into your process so that it becomes part of your regular communication style.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Anne. I'm going to end the broadcast now. I'm going to ask you one more question. I'll let people listen in while I ask you, because I have a personal question from myself.
Okay.
That I want to ask. So I'm going to keep this going for 1 second. Last bonus question for me, because I write a ton. I personally am going to get your new book because I've got a book that I published to Amazon years ago, self-published. I love writing. I write blog posts and articles for the company Audit. So what do you recommend for a writing tool for ideas and then producing your disorganized for producing? Yeah. I'm sorry. A writing tool to kind of get those notes out, and then also a tool for producing. Maybe they're one and the same. Like I use Evernote when I jot down my ideas. Yep. Well, for a walk, I'll use Evernote. And then 3 weeks later, I'm like, I wish I could remember what I wrote in Evernote. And I've got like hundreds and hundreds of stuff. So like for the person who like me, who's totally disorganized, disconnected, do you have tools that you recommend that are better than using Evernote, right?
A lot of people love Evernote. I've been using just a lot of, Google Docs to capture, collections of ideas. I still do a lot of writing in Word or Google Docs or something. When it comes to something big like a book, my last book, I had all of this research and all of these interviews, and it was like, now I have too much stuff and I can't quite organize it. And so I finally used Scrivener, which was delightful. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. I think it's overkill for blogging. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. I haven't tried it for that. I just use it. It's really a heavier duty, do a book kind of thing, but it's
Yeah,
a
I'm
wonderful
familiar
tool.
with
Yeah.
My big problem is probably just organizing it, and tag, like Evernote's a weird thing. You can tag things, and I literally I will start probably 5 or 6 ideas a day for
Mm-hmm.
articles or for social media posts. And I write them out. Like sometimes it's just a note. Sometimes I write a few paragraphs and I have fully intention, like, wow, this is my next blog post. And then literally a month later, I'll find it. And I'm publishing things, so I'm doing things, or then I'll find something that I published, but I didn't mark it as published. I'm like, I wish I had some kind of way to,
Oops. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
I know it's hard. And then the other thing about this is that sometimes, first of all, it's great that you're generating all those ideas, and that itself is an end because you're continuing to feed that furnace of writing and ideas. So I start plenty of things that then I look at and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not. Maybe something will come back later. I have, collections of things that need a new home or things that might go into a book about this that I just kind of file away somewhere. The idea of worrying about capturing and saving everything, some things are just meant to be something you work through before you end up where you're really finally going.
right.
So don't worry about clinging to and saving everything. Keep the ideas generating. But so, it's.
I think you said it. I probably just need to get better at filing. Like
sorry.
like how, and in Evernote that lets you tag things and put things in folders, and I just have to. My experience with filing is that I'll put things in drawers and then I forget they're there. So I've got to, and then maybe going back and looking at the files every now and then. So
yeah.
sorry,
I don't have a perfect answer for you.
No, you know what? I probably need to be talking to somebody who is like written a book on organization.
Right. That's what you need.
That sounds like my problem. Well, thank you, Anne. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Get on with your day, and thanks for all of you listening live, and have a great week.